Good evening. Tonight on the Late Debate, taking on Sadiq Khan and the battle for the soul of Labour. First up, a look at the three Tories who want to follow Boris Johnson and become Mayor of London. Andrew Boff has been a familiar face in London politics for decades. A former Hillingdon council leader, he tried to become the Conservative candidate in the first mayoral election in 2000. He eventually lost out to Steve Norris. Boff was later elected to the London Assembly, where he became a critic of London's Olympic project, predicting a bleak future for the athletes' village.
It's a recipe for social problems and it's a slum for the future.
When Sadiq Khan became mayor, Boff challenged him over his campaign promises.
So that's not a target for you, 80,000 new homes a year.
If we can build 8,000 genuinely affordable homes in London, that'd be fantastic.
That's interesting, but I wouldn't mind an answer to the question.
I think I've answered it 7 times.
No, you've answered the question you wanted me to ask.
Shaun Bailey was a youth worker when the Tories chose him to fight the Labour seat of Hammersmith in the 2010 general election. Photo calls with David Cameron followed.
Black politics in this country would be much more sophisticated when the Labour movement stopped acting like they own black people. Slavery's ended.
Bailey lost, but like Boff, got elected to the London Assembly, where this year he questioned the mayor over stop and search.
Are you going to guarantee young black Londoners they will not be targeted?
I'm saying target-led, intelligence-based, with a body-worn video.
Mr. Mayor, I've asked you the question 4 times and you've not answered.
It's for me to answer the questions how I would answer them.
Oh, by the way, I found this today in the paper, and there's this really good job on High Street.
Joy Morrisey's early career was a far cry from the town halls and municipal offices of London. She was a film actress in America.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Oh, bye, Tim.
But her Hollywood dreams were firmly on the back burner last year when she stood as Tory candidate in the marginal seat of Ealing Central and Acton. The Prime Minister played a supporting role on the campaign trail, where Morrisey sometimes toured the streets on a scooter.
You don't have to worry about parking, and you can just kind of like zip around.
Despite Labour's wafer-thin majority in Ealing, Morrisey failed to unseat Rupa Huck. Now she's one of 3 Tories hoping to evict Sadiq Khan from City Hall.
Each of them got a very interesting story to tell. The question is whether one of them has the personality, has the policies, and the profile ultimately to try and unseat Sadiq.
For Andrew Boff, trying to be Conservative candidate for mayor has become something of a habit and a tradition. He enters the contest every time. Well, joining me tonight are those 3 challengers, Shaun Bailey, Joy Morrisey and Andrew Boff. Welcome all of you. Now, before the end of the month, one of you 3 will have been chosen by your party to be the candidate. Which one is it going to be? Tell me in your own words, in 60 seconds, why it should be you. Shaun, you start.
I think I want to see a London where criminals are under pressure, not communities, and I have the right policies and the right experience to deliver that. I want to put a roof over young Londoners' heads so they can afford to buy in the future and afford to rent today. I want to see a clean, green environment where Londoners can thrive, and I have the experience, both governmental, community and politically, to help that happen in London for Londoners.
Shaun, Joy.
I'm a working mother. I'm someone who's just sometimes struggling to get by. I'm a private renter. I understand what it's like to live in London and to feel the burn of living in the capital. And I want to make life better for every Londoner. I want to be tough on crime and antisocial behaviour, and I want to increase house building in London. And I'm someone who's worked with communities all over London and local charities, and I've done humanitarian work in Kosovo, Albania, China, and India. And I really feel that London is the most diverse and cosmopolitan city in the world, and it's something that really reflects my story, and I just want to give something back.
Andrew, finally?
Well, I've got the experience. I'm a tax-cutting Tory, and I've proven that to the world when I was leader of Hillingdon Council. People know that I can go to places that other Tories don't go and attract votes from communities who aren't traditional Tory supporters. And my priority is to ensure that the streets are safe and that people live in homes that they're proud to live in. And my objective is that London should be at peace with itself and not always treat its residents like adults.
Let's cut to the chase here. Recent elections suggest that London is a Labour city. You're all Brexiteers. London is a Remain city. The truth is that Sadiq Khan is going to win this, isn't he, in 2020?
I'd say not. I happen to be on the London Assembly on the Economy Committee, and whenever you speak to business and Londoners about Brexit, they always want to talk about what's next, the change, and want to see that change. I think one of the real shames of Sadiq is talk the city down in order to make himself relevant. What London needs now is a champion.
Well, London is open, isn't talking London down.
Whoever suggested it was closed was the question I would ask. The thing is, Londoners need a champion to make sure we remain the best place in the world to start a business and raise a family, and give that support, give employment to Londoners, so they can, go forward and have a good, strong life, because we have a strong economy.
Joy, if you're the candidate, how are you going to take on somebody who's established and has done the job for 4 years? You're a relative newcomer to municipal politics.
Well, I think it's about building the community and the support across London and building our base. I don't think people thought that Sadiq Khan, I remember when he was selected, they thought, oh, he's not going to be the candidate, and he stormed City Hall. So I think 2 years is an eternity in politics. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. And I care about the different communities across London. I'm someone who has a track record of working as an outreach worker, working on the housing estates. I genuinely care, and I want to reach out to every person in London, so that this is a campaign not just for the Conservatives, but for everyone who's proud to be a Londoner.
Andrew, have the Tories learned from Zach Goldsmith's failed campaign last time, the so-called dog whistle tactics?
Yes, absolutely, they've learned. But you've got to remember the weakness of Khan is that he's abandoned his own base. People are fed up of the fact that every single promise that he made prior to the elections, he seems to have abandoned. He's abandoned people in overcrowded conditions by removing the quota for family-sized homes from the housing strategy. He's tolerating developments which socially segregate people by having rich doors and poor doors. He's abandoned his base. And, I'm going to be parking my tanks on his lawn and speaking for those people, because Londoners would expect me to speak on behalf of those who are on the margins and haven't got a voice.
We'll talk about your individual policies in a moment, but let's talk about where you all agree. And one thing all three of you say is that you will abandon plans to extend the ultra-low emission zone out to the North and South Circular. Why?
Well, I think for me it divides communities. I'm a counsellor in Ealing. You could get charged £12.50 just taking your child to school every day, and so I want to keep air quality.
Something's got to be done about pollution.
Well, absolutely.
At least Sadiq Khan is doing that.
Well, I think what we could do is we could take the money, the sort of $750 million that we're going to use to put in the ultra-low emission zone, use that to bring in more electric buses in the centre of London. We still can focus on air quality. We can look at the current congestion zone, and we could make that the ultra-low emission zone in that border. And instead of sort of taxing and dividing the suburbs, I think we need to look at a more creative way of tackling air pollution.
Shaun, another area where some of you agree is driverless tube trains. You're never going to get that past the unions, are you?
I think you will, and I don't think they can halt progress. There's a number of reasons to do it. One is so that we're not at the mercy of the unions. Every time they have a personal dispute, they then just bring it to the Hall of London and bring London to a full stop over one or two members of staff. I don't think that's right. Of course, the unions have the right to represent their members, but they have to do it in a much more responsible way. But the more important thing, I would be born in London where it's easy to move around no matter where you work or live. And driverless trains mean that we can run more trains, we can increase the service, and that will increase the capacity. Anybody who commutes in London, as I do, as millions of people watch this programme, will know that we need more capacity on the rail, and that's the way to do it.
I want to talk about one of the big issues in London at the moment, the violent crime, the epidemic that has claimed 100 lives so far this year, and your ideas. Andrew, it's not mentioned on your website, but you've suggested one answer is to legalise cannabis. Now, the Mayor doesn't have the power to do that, but you have talked about this in the past.
No. What I've talked about is the contribution that the drugs market has had on the violence that's taken place. And the Deputy Commissioner was before us only a few weeks back and confirmed that half those deaths were down to the drugs market. Somebody's got to do something about it. We need tough action in order to save those young lives, because this is not getting any better. And we need to come up with radical solutions as to how we're going to protect those young people.
So what's your radical solution?
My radical solution is to first get tough on the gangs and increase stop and search to ensure that those knives come off the streets. But we have to tie that up with new opportunities for young people to divert them. When I ran a youth club in a part of Hackney that was right in the middle of a gang area, the best way of getting those kids on our side and on the right path again was to give them something else to do, and that means tying up with all those local agencies who can deliver that kind of
Where do you stand
service.
on legalising drugs?
Well, I think it's got to be. I absolutely think it's got to be regulated, because now at the moment,
what does that mean? Regulated?
That means that at the moment it's easier to get hold. It's easier to get a hold of high potency for kids to get hold of high potency cannabis than it is for them to get hold of tobacco or alcohol. And that's the reality of living on some of the estates in London, and we've got to recognise that, and we've got to regulate that drug too, so they can't get hold of it. Too many young lives are being ruined.
Sean, young people is an area of expertise for you. You ran a youth charity. What's your big idea for stopping the problem at the moment?
There's two things. When I used to run my job club, it was all about diverting young people away from crime. But what I quickly learned about the job club, it's powerful only if they aren't swamped in crime. So my big idea is to give the police the money to have 1,000 extra officers. One of the crimes of Khan...
Sadiq Khan has argued that the money's been taken away by the government.
The money is there right now. I have a costed plan. I was on the front of the Evening Standard with a fully costed plan to do it. But the key thing is this: it's not about saving money, it's about saving lives. It's about empowering the police to protect communities properly. Again, we are working for a London
where
criminals...
Search? More stop and search?
More stop and search in conjunction with the communities. What do you want to do when you talk about stop and search? You want to you want to target it, give the police the technology to do it properly, target it in crime hotspots. Remember, this is about protecting the lives of Londoners. We want a London where criminals are under pressure, not communities. The biggest failing on crime in London is sanctions and detentions. So under Khan, crime has gone up, but prosecutions and sanctions detections have gone down. That gap I'd absolutely close.
Joy, you've talked about more knife arches. Whereabouts? What do you mean?
Well, I think we need them in two places. I think in tube stations and also sort of...
So all passengers going into a tube station go to a knife arch?
No, I think it should be actually something that could be mobile, so that it's not always predictable where the knife arch will be, so if you're carrying a weapon, you're not always thinking, okay, I'm just going to skip this tube line because there's a knife arch. It should be something that's mobile. And the same for a knife arch at a school. It shouldn't be at a school all the time. It can be something that can be mobilised throughout London, so it's not...
Do you think Londoners are going to appreciate being stopped and forced through a knife arch on their way to work?
My biggest concern is young people who are being targeted by gangs and drug dealers and drug enforcers. A lot of people are carrying knives not because they want to, but because they're doing it in defence because of the drug dealer or drug enforcer that's carrying the knife. And a lot of young people just can't even walk from their estate to their school without being targeted. And it's just trying to create a safe environment where kids, everyone has the same opportunity to learn. And if you're a mom and you're a single mom and you're going off to work, you don't want to have to worry that your child is going to get targeted by a gang member walking to school and walking back to school. And so it isn't about one group being targeted or not. It's about letting everyone have the opportunity.
I think the only problem about knife arches is dealing with a symptom and not the problem. The root problem is that kids are carrying knives onto the street. Why are they doing that? And also, we've got to be sure that we get away from this numbers argument. We will never win a numbers argument with Sadiq Khan. If we say 1,000 extra officers, Sadiq Khan will say 2,000 extra officers, and the only reason I'm not giving it to you is because of the government.
Sean, Joy, Andrew, I'm afraid we've run out of time. In less than a month, we will know that one of you is the person taking on Sadiq Khan. For the moment, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us this evening. Now, to the other side of the political divide. It's not an easy time to be a Labour MP at the moment. There's talk of deselection. 3 MPs have already quit the party, with more rumoured to be considering their options, including the Ilford South MP, Mike Gapes.
I was born in London and I'm purely British and I love my country because this is my Jewish flag.
For months, anti-Semitism has been tearing Labour apart. These were the scenes outside a meeting of the party's National Executive Committee in London this week. In the Commons, Jeremy Corbyn was once again on the back foot as the Prime Minister tore into him.
There is no place for racism in any form within our society. On that we're all agreed, and we should tackle it wherever it arises, in our own parties as well.
He's trying to change his party so anti-Semites can call the creation of Israel racist. And he should be ashamed of himself.
Mike Gapes has been the Labour MP for Ilford South since 1992. In recent years, he's become a cheerleader for those who fear the current Labour Party has become a breeding ground for intolerance. When Ken Livingstone suggested Hitler was a Zionist, Gapes was one of the first to call on the party to expel the former mayor.
What he has said is absolutely appalling and disgraceful, and nobody in the Labour Party should make those kind of remarks.
But it wasn't always that way. 10 years ago, during the mayoral election campaign, Livingstone and Gapes were happy to share a platform and swap warm words about each other.
We need the experience and the commitment of Ken Livingstone, and I would like to introduce Ken to you now. Thank you very much.
But in the Labour Party of today, factions have sowed division, and even former allies can become enemies. I'm joined now by Mike Gapes, the Ilford South Labour MP, to take a look at those issues. Mike, welcome. Now, you were agonising over the weekend over whether to resign from Labour because of anti-Semitism. What have you decided?
Well, I'm still a Labour Member of Parliament. I was actually agonising, it was in my local paper last week, but I've been agonising for several weeks about where this party is.
Are you still agonising about leaving?
I've been a member of the Labour Party for 50 years. I was 66 this week. I joined when I was 16 in 1968, and I joined to fight racism and anti-Semitism. I grew up in Ilford. I'm not Jewish, but I had a lot of Jewish friends at school, and I could never imagine that my party would have anti-Semites in positions of influence, and that the Labour Party would be perceived by large numbers of people in this country, Jewish and non-Jewish, as being an anti-Semitic racist party. That is horrible.
So have you decided whether to stay or go?
I'm not leaving the Labour Party. I am at the moment, however, very concerned, and I'm fighting with many others to make sure we do the right thing on anti-Semitism.
So have you had enough this week to make you change your mind and think it's worth staying and fighting?
Let's start with the first step. The National Executive Committee quite rightly adopted all the 11 examples and the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition at its meeting on Tuesday afternoon. But then it put an unnecessary qualification paragraph in as well, completely unnecessary. And Jeremy Corbyn tried to make a bigger statement added to that, but the NEC stopped it. But the Parliamentary Party, on Wednesday, we voted 205 to 8 to have the entire definition and all the examples, no caveats, no additions. And I think the NEC now has to accept that we can change our standing orders and we don't have qualifications. That's a very important part.
Are you a happier man this week than last week?
I'm happy that the NEC has done almost the right thing. As Margaret Hodge said, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But we've still got a long way to go, because we've got to now deal with the anti-Semitism that is in the party and get rid of the people who are anti-Semites. There is an investigation going on and so on, and that needs to be accelerated.
It's not just about anti-Semitism, as you and some of your colleagues have pointed out. It's also about the intolerance that has emerged in some local Labour parties. How bad's it been for you?
Well, locally, my party is generally very friendly, although I do occasionally have some people who don't like me, and it's rather robust. But my own constituency and the neighbouring constituency, we've got a good mainstream centre-left leadership of our council. We've got a good campaigning local Labour Party. But we do have some problems sometimes. But I've been appalled by what's happening in some other parts of the country.
But you've not had that nastiness?
Not personally.
I mean, there was some suggestion when you had your health issues with your heart that might have been caused by pressure from...
Parliament in being an MP is a pretty stressful job, but it wasn't caused by local people. It was. I know that there were people wishing me dead when I was in an induced coma in hospital. I only found out when I came out of hospital 2 months later. But no, I mean that's the end of 2015. I'm very active on Twitter. I do get trolled. I've just changed my Twitter settings a week ago so that I now don't see most of this abuse. And a lot of it is manufactured by troll factories. These aren't real people. And I think there is a real question here about social media and how it's used to highlight and amplify extremism.
Why is it so bad in the Labour Party?
Well, I think it's bad in society generally. but I think in the Labour Party we've had a group of people, some of them have come into the party in the last 3 or 4 years, and they basically, some of them have come out of far left groups, or there were people who were expelled in the past. Many of them aren't young people. These are 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old people who've come back to the Labour Party. But we've also got a lot of genuine, inspired, good, active people in our party.
You've made it clear you're going to stay in your party.
Well,
Do you think...
I'm not staying forever. I mean, I might, you know, you never know.
You might retire at some point.
Yes, I mean, I'm you know, all of us are mortal, and I have no intention of dying in Parliament. I mean, I actually think if you make pension contributions, you should at least try and have some of your pension at some point.
And if you stay, Jeremy Corbyn, should he stay as leader, or have you given up on that fight?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn is the leader, and he will be the leader, I think, until the next general election. I don't think there's any way that Jeremy Corbyn could be replaced as leader, unless he chooses to stand down.
You've been speaking in the Commons today about him and his reaction to the Skripal poisoning.
Well, my main... I didn't actually focus specifically on Jeremy. I focused on the broader question, and I mentioned Seamus Milne, the spokesman.
His main spin doctor.
Yes, and I was very critical of Seamus Milne and remarks that he's made in March, where he seemed to imply that this wasn't done by the Russians, it could have been done by someone else. And I've attacked that very strongly in Parliament today.
Can I just ask you briefly, in another role, you wear the hat as chairman of the all-party group on Crossrail.
That's correct.
Crossrail's in trouble. How worried should we be?
Well, let's get the facts clear. Crossrail is the biggest engineering project in Europe. And up until a few months ago, it was all going incredibly well, and it was on budget and all the rest of it. They had the fire at the Pudding Mill Lane depot just before Christmas last year, which has caused some problems. But also, the main problem I think they've got, they have to integrate 3 separate systems on the trains, because there's a system in the east before from Shenfield into Liverpool Street. There will be a separate one for the tunnelled part, and then there's a third one that goes out from Paddington to the west. These are not one system, because you're integrating National Rail and the Underground. It's complex.
It's a very complex.
Very complex.
Yeah.
And I think... I'm very disappointed that this late decision, and we've got a meeting of our all-party group next week where we're going to talk to Crossrail about this, but I would rather that they picked up on it now than have the fiasco like happened in the Northern Rail and the things of timetabling problems elsewhere.
Mike, thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us this evening. I'm sure you will be hoping to be on that opening Royal train on Crossrail whenever it happens. So thank you to all my guests tonight, to Shaun, Joy, Andrew and Mike. I'll be back next month after the party conferences, so there'll be plenty to talk about then. Until then, thank you for watching and good night.